Hi, listeners, and welcome to MiHolland Update. I'm Marianne Manderfield, Public Information Coordinator for the city, and today our guest is Lynn McCammon, the city's Director of Finance. You have put a lot of work into the last 6 months for the budget, and that is really quite a process. Can you take us through some of that?
Sure, thanks, Marianne. I'd be happy to talk more about the city's budget process. I think the annual budget document is one of the most important documents for the city. Not only does it outline the estimated revenue and expenditures for the coming year, but it communicates the city's mission, vision, and strategic plan. And it also provides an operational guide for the implementation of council's priorities.
City Council just passed the budget for fiscal year 2023. And that actually begins coming up here on July 1st. But the process of that work actually starts in December of the prior year. So there's a lot of input from a variety of stakeholders. Kind of walk us through some of that.
Sure. The public process really begins with an event we call Coffee with Council, and that's in early January. The city hosts this event, which is an opportunity for council to hear from citizens. It's a wonderful example of a best practice in budgeting, as involving citizens in the early part of the process actually allows for the consideration of that input when council establishes the priorities for the upcoming budget. January is quite busy. We also then host a study session in which city department heads have an opportunity to interact with council. At that event, they share updates on priorities and future objectives at the departmental level. In fact, one positive change that resulted from COVID was the introduction of department videos. I would encourage listeners to check those out online to learn more about what goes on behind the scenes in some of our departments and how that impacts our budget development. You can find those videos at www.cityofholland.com and look under the Finance Department section. The final event that occurs in January is an event we call the Council Advance. So after council has had an opportunity to gather input from stakeholders, they meet to evaluate that information, and as they establish their priorities for the upcoming budget, they factor that into that. As you can imagine, there are many priorities and requests for spending, but this process allows council to narrow that down and prioritize those areas that ultimately become the focus of the current year budget. It's important as we work to strategically align the available resources, which at times can be limited, with the priorities of the citizens and City Council. In fact, I've been mentioning some of those best practices, and this again is another example of the city's strategic and business planning process. Each year, this prioritization actually becomes part of the strategic and business plan update.
That's quite a bit of work in January, Lynn, isn't it, with those three big initiatives?
Yes, it is.
That takes place. But you've added something this year to the process. Tell us about that.
Right, thanks. So one initiative that we expanded on this year's budget cycle was our long-term planning efforts. If you can believe it, the city actually maintains a 50-year capital improvement plan. Yes, the city actually works to identify all the capital needs that we foresee over the next 50 years. And that not only includes major projects, but we also try to look and focus on what costs we might need to set aside for significant repairs and maintenance. This year, we actually took that 50-year plan and combined it with our long-term financial forecast because we want to make sure that we have enough estimated revenues to pay for not only the capital costs that we have included in that plan, but also the other operational costs. So we actually combined the two and took the first 20 years of that 50-year plan into one comprehensive outlook. So you may wonder why we do that, because especially it's somewhat difficult to know exactly what's going to happen in 20 years.
Absolutely.
But again, going with our best practice philosophy, it is critical to understand how a decision made in this current year's budget could impact future years. For example, we were looking at some of the considerations for expanding fire staffing. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to see what that looked like in the current year, but we wanted to make sure we could continue to afford those additional positions in the coming years once we looked at all of our other forecasted expenditures.
Well, that's so critical for that long-term planning. It's wonderful that we can do all of these new things, but to have the plan to be able to afford, maintain, and upkeep all of the buildings and hold positions for that far out, that's quite amazing of all the planning that takes place.
It is, and critically important. And we do plan on continuing to update that at least once or twice a year to make sure we continue to track any changes.
Okay.
You know, like think about all the changes that are coming through the economy right now with the inflation. So
Oh,
we want to
sure.
make sure we continually update that so we can consider the impact of those.
Absolutely. So that's, again, a lot of work. All of that happens, and then that's all put into a document that council reviews in April.
Yes, that's right. This year, in fact, council took 2 evenings, April 20th and 21st, and they do a thorough review of the proposed budget. And it's also an opportunity for them to see how their priorities that they established way back in January made it to the final draft of the budget. So I must say it's really interesting when you see all those puzzle pieces
Sure.
put together.
I can see that. How did everything go this year?
So that went well, and then we actually, after they had a review in April, they came back and set a public hearing for May. And once more, public had an opportunity to provide any input to the process. And after the public input had closed, the council took action and approved the budget. So it was adopted in May, and the fiscal year, as you mentioned, starts July 1st.
Right around the corner.
Yeah.
So one question listeners might have, does this include Board of Public Works in the budget?
Right. I can see how sometimes that can be confusing, but yes, the Board of Public Works is officially part of the city and therefore included as part of the process.
Okay.
But they do operate kind of independently and have a separate board, so that board too reviews their budget, but ultimately it is included in the city's budget, which is online.
And one thing to note, if somebody was to go back and look at the videos, Dave Coster, the general manager of BPW, does do a department video so people could see their priorities and initiatives within the department head videos as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep, he's fully participates in the process.
So what are some of the larger things or some of the larger items in this year's budget?
Well, I think first and foremost, the city's tax rate has not increased. In fact, it's remained the same level as for the past 10 years. And maintaining this rate continues to be a priority for our city council.
And that's significant, 10 years
It
without
is.
an increase.
That's right. So we really focus on trying to be the best stewards of citizens' resources. So another focus in the budget is funding for both of Holland's fire stations and adding 3 new firefighter positions, which I kind of talked about how we looked at that in the
Sure.
long-term planning. So if you drive out by the Waverly Road corridor, it's not hard to see that the city has experienced lots of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So with that growth, it contributes to the increasing demand for fire response services. So that was a priority that came out of the council advance.
Okay.
And so this budget actually includes funding for a new Waverly Fire Station and the renovation of the Collin Park Station. We need to get those capital infrastructure in place to be able to support the services. So in addition to the capital improvements, the budget did include funding for 3 additional fighter positions as
Okay.
well. Another kind of exciting thing is if you look in the budget document, the full 400-page document, we have expanded our section on capital expenditures, and there's a full page on almost every project that we have proposed for the next 5 years. And those pages include a picture, first of all, which is always nice
That's
to
always
see.
nice, yes.
But it includes information on some operational impacts of a proposed project. And a new thing we did this year, it even includes an analysis of any community energy plan considerations.
Oh, okay.
So that's demonstrating the city's commitment to the community energy plan.
Sure. So people can really take a deep dive and
Yeah.
really understand what's behind all the projects that are coming up.
Right. It just makes it more usable, and you can really get information that way. But one of those exciting projects that's in that budget is the proposed ice skating park, which we've
Okay.
heard a lot about
Sure.
lately.
Absolutely.
A very exciting project,
Mhm.
and as you might know, the city received a very generous donation towards that. And the budget reflects the project, and it's already underway and generating lots of enthusiasm.
It has. It has. I think that'll be an exciting ad
Yes,
for
it will be.
for people and visitors alike.
Yep.
What would you like the community to understand most about the budget and its process?
That's an interesting question. I've actually personally had an opportunity to work for other municipalities, and I just can't say enough about how much I enjoy being part of the City of Holland's budget process. It really is a great process and designed around those best practices I keep referring to. And that's important as the final budget becomes a working document that incorporates all the input. And that's, I think, one of the key best practices I keep referring to is we include input from so many different stakeholders. And all that input becomes translated into the plan for the year. We can see what it looks like from our financial perspective.
Sure. So, it is truly a document taken from all the stakeholders.
Exactly.
Including residents, absolutely.
Right.
That's the focus. And you told us before, but tell us one more time, where can they stay informed about the budget? Where can they find more information about it?
Yeah, and this is a great question because I think I might have mentioned before, our official budget document is 400 plus pages, and that is available online, www.cityofholland.com. Look under the finance. But I do recognize not everybody loves reading it quite as much as I do. But so an interesting thing we added just last year and continue to do is we produce a document called the Budget in Brief. And it is a 7-page, just 7-page summary of the budget and provides some key highlights as well as some great pictures. So I really encourage everyone to check that out, even if you don't want to read the whole budget document. But again, look for that Budget in Brief.
Yes.
There's a lot of great overview information.
It is. It's a great, you can pick that up and flip through it very quickly and really get the gist of everything that's in there. Anything else you'd like the listeners to know or want to tell listeners about the budget or the process?
No, just again, reinforce that hopefully our listeners will take an opportunity to learn more about the process and then keep checking back for additional opportunities to get involved with future budgets. Believe it or not, the next Coffee with Council is only 6 months away, and we'd love to hear from everybody.
Yes, absolutely. That typically happens in January, so stay tuned.
Yes, thank you for having me today.
Sure. Thank you, Lynn. And until next time, this has been MiHolland Update.